Item on the agenda is the President's report. And that I will let you begin with if you're ready.
You bet you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, guests, friends, family, good evening. So it's a great day. I will try to keep my report brief, perhaps just a couple of general comments to start with. I do have an introduction to make, and there he is right there. I want to introduce to you our new Dean of Arts and Humanities, Dr. Daniel Powell, who has joined us from Florida, and he came at the right time in the summer, but
nice.
Absolutely tickled to have him here. And I don't know, Danny, if you want to just give maybe just a 1-minute overview of your background and why you're excited to be here.
Yeah,
so I can tell you're excited.
Yes, I'm very excited. This is day 3, and so I know how to turn on my computer. I know where my boxes are for the kitchen and the bathroom, and my clothes, so I'm able to function. But I'm really excited to be here because of what can be for this institution. I'm really excited about all the changes that have been made and the direction that the whole institution is going. And I've not met one bad person yet. I mean, everybody is so nice. The people are nice. The welcome has been very warm and gracious. And so I'm really looking forward to digging in and working with everybody. I come from Florida, directly from Patel Conservatory, indirectly from Chipola College, where I served as Associate Dean, Open and Performing Arts Building. I have a doctorate degree in Music and Arts Administration and an MBA. So I feel like I'm well-rounded, and my door is always open, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you, getting to know you, and just working with the community. So feel free to stop by anytime. My door is always open.
Welcome to campus. I'm delighted to have him. I tell you, it's one of the most intriguing characters when you find a doctorate in the arts and an MBA with a finance and business perspective. And so I figured he's got to be both creative and analytical, and that's a unique package. But we're delighted to have you here. Looking forward. I hear your family will be here shortly.
Yes, my daughter's coming next week.
Wonderful.
So, we're just going to be transitioning. So but I wanted to start as soon as possible, so I made my way across the country and to start June 1st. So
we're tickled to have you. So thank you. Welcome. And I know I probably shouldn't share this, but I can kind of share it, Carol. Hopefully, they actually ran the capital construction database modeling from the Laramie Community College Commission. So this is the database in which we enter all of the community colleges' capital construction requests, project requests. They analyze them and chew on all the data, and then they essentially generate a prioritized list based on 13 capital measures. And the LCCC Fine and Performing Arts Building was ranked number 1 coming out of that system. Our library renovation expansion was number 2. So going into the very first step from capital construction, we're positioned quite well. So it's still a long road, but I tell you what, that's the first big step, and having us start there is a great step. So the commission will discuss that and actually act on it at their meeting later on this month, and then it'll go to construction management and the state building commission and the governor and the legislature. And so we're positioned pretty well. So you may be a good omen, Daniel. Kevin, you come here and
all right. The weather and see this. Yeah,
everything's perfect.
Can we take you out?
as much as possible.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I also want to just take a moment, and hopefully, Mr. Chairman, I'm not taking your privilege to introduce the new student trustee. So Jamie, help me with your last name.
Quinones or Quinones.
Quinones.
Yeah. Jamie Quinones. I'm the new student ex officio here, and I look forward to doing what I can. As far as I know right now, I'm just pretty much a Facebook moderator, and then I have an open voice for the students. So I will speak up, and I will have questions to ask. But it's a pleasure to join you guys, and thank you very much.
Well, welcome, Jamie. And in general, certainly it's the chairman's direction to engage the ex officios and give you the privilege of the floor. But I know that the board and Chairman Mosier have been always open and interested in hearing from our ex officios. You'll have a standing opportunity for a report on here, but you are the second student ex officio member, and so we expect great things from you, but have no doubt that you'll deliver on that.
I shall.
Chair Mosier, may I interrupt about our ex officio? Do we assign him a mentor? I told him that we would.
Well,
Well, then you're a
Trustee Merrill, you assign that mentor.
Dawn.
No,
has to
I'd
be
love
a
to do
man.
it. However, I think that you have just indicated that you think that it's an important function.
I do, so I'll do it.
And you're the mama of the students.
I am.
Okay.
We'll be in touch.
Thank
But
you, Trustee
I'd be
Merrill.
happy to do it.
Okay. Well, if I can't get a hold of her, I'll get a hold of you.
Yeah, get a hold
Or
of
any
it.
of us.
Thank you.
Dr.
I'm sorry.
Schaefer, we'll put you back in the driver's seat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Of course, many of you know we celebrated an outstanding groundbreaking ceremony today as we broke ground on our Flex Tech building. And I was very, very impressed by the turnout. The remark, Mr. Chairman, your remarks were spot on. The governor's, George Mackle. It was just an exceptional event. The weather held for us, and I was very, very impressed by the energy and excitement that so many people around the audience really had about that event. So we did have bid openings yesterday, and hopefully by probably next week we'll have a good indication of bid awards. And Carol, I don't know if you want to share anything about the bids, but I think they came in and we sort of sighed a deep sigh of relief, seeing that they weren't exceptionally high.
No, I think, Mr. Chair and trustees, the bids were very favorable for us. I kept telling Joe I thought we were going to be $2.5 million short, and we weren't. We're a little bit short, but not much. And so we're real pleased, and we'll be working with the construction management division. They've actually been very, very good to work with for us, and they allow us to give input into their decision of who the contractor will be. And actually, I think we're going to make a decision tomorrow.
Good, great,
We have a meeting on your calendar tomorrow, so
wonderful.
we're very close to that. And
Will that information be sent out to the trustees?
who the contractor is? Oh,
Yes.
certainly, yes. Yes.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if we are meeting tomorrow and we have a decision, I will let you know tomorrow. Really exciting time for us. So thank you for your leadership.
Mr. Chair, how many bids, excuse me, Carol, how many bids did we receive?
I just happen to have that information. I want to say about 8. Six of them.
That's super. That's super that we get that many.
And the difference between the bottom bid and the top bid was about 1.7 million. So they're clustered pretty close together.
Thank you. Really appreciate that info.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Chairman, the last thing I want to share with you, and one of the things I hope to do more in digestible bites, is start sharing with you. I know you had some interest in having access to some of the detailed data on educational outcomes and our key performance indicators. And I thought, just coming off of a commencement ceremony and the end of the academic year, I would share this one with you first. What you have is basically the dashboard we're using for credential tracking. As you recall, you as trustees set a goal to increase the number of educational credentials we award by 5% each year through 2022. And this essentially marks out the targets we have to meet each year by 2022 to meet that 5% increase. And each community college and boards of trustees across the state have committed to the same goal. And you can see the first year, which you set the goal and we tracked that, we were shy with 698 credentials. But I just want to point out what happened then in the years to follow that. 840 credentials last year, 843 credentials this year. If we produce just at the level we are now, we're still going to outpace next year's goal with that. And that is absolutely exceptional. It's almost a 25% increase in 2 years in the credentials and in an environment where enrollment has been decreasing. So this is something that I'll bring you on an annual basis. You'll be able to track it with us. We hope to actually get this a little more prominently displayed around campus. But your faculty and staff are doing an exceptional job at helping students find the path to their educational goal. And you can see it right here in the numbers. Now, I will point out that when you look at 2022, 1,100 degrees and certificates is a big number. I think it's a doable number without a doubt, but we're going to have to work. But the thing I really enjoy, really considering here is a lot of the work that the faculty did and that the campus did and that we've done in the service areas just now was finished this year. So in terms of really implementing a lot of the things that we think will help students succeed, we haven't even seen that yet. So this is just by people digging in, working hard, and really working with students. When some of those new changes hit, I think we're going to see some pretty impressive results. The backside of it just sort of breaks down summer, fall, spring, degrees, certificates, and total awards, number of graduates, and all that great stuff. So if you want to dig into the data and really look at it, it's there for you. But I thought I'd just share this with you as a way to sort of give you some of the data on educational outcomes and student achievement. And thus far, LCCC is doing exceptionally well. That, Mr. Chairman, is my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the president? I have one, maybe more comment than question, but we'll see if I can turn that just a little bit. When I look at this data on the back, one of the things I'm pleased to see is, as an old faculty member, is one thing we do find is that certificates have increased, but not at a level that I think is taking away from the degrees, which is very pleasing, because I want the students to move on and get the degrees. I think they need that. We know they need that. And so the certificates are not supplanting that. And if you have any comments on that, I would appreciate that, but I like to see that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and I agree. And one of the things that we're identifying is that there's actually differing populations of students, those that are pursuing a certificate or a stackable series of certificates, and those that are pursuing degrees. And there's certainly those that that earn them both. But it really is serving almost separate populations of students, those that want the certificate for occupational entry or advancement, those that are really pursuing the degree for transfer or because they need it for licensure before they do occupational entry. And so we're not really seeing a major shift away from one type of credential to another. What we're finding is that we're actually figuring out how to make sure students achieve credentials on both sides. And so something we'll have to watch. I will say that next year when we start looking at the general education transfer block, we may see more students attaining in the next couple of years degrees and certificates in the AAAS area because of that. But for the most part, really what we're doing is finding ways to create a credential and get students to it for the purpose of what their educational plan is.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. At this time, I was wondering, Vicki, if you wanted to go ahead and call Brenda. I think we do have the board reports, but those will be relatively short. If you want to go ahead and, is it okay if I go ahead and comment on those things, or? Okay. On the board reports, the F&F will be meeting at what time, Trustee Erickson?
I believe that there's going to be a change in the date. And Trustee Merle will be chairing that meeting because I will be gone next week. So I'll pass it over to you, Trustee Merle.
Mr. Chair, I would like to change that meeting to Tuesday, the 9th at 10 o'clock. If you and Dr. Schaefer are available. Carol Hoagland said that she could do that.
I'm available.
Okay.
Faster.
This is Brenda. Hi, Brenda. We're just about there.
Does that work,
sounds
Joe?
Great. Thanks, Vicki.
Possibly, but keep that date and we'll make it work.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Because Carol will be there. Carol, you're available.
Carol said
at
she
that
could
time.
do that.
Yep.
Thanks.
Keep that date. We'll make it work.
Thank you.
Okay, and I believe the other committee that is meeting on June 22nd, and Brenda, you could confirm or deny this, but I believe Academic Standards is meeting June 22nd.
That's correct.
And at 5:30 for those who are interested. I'm not sure we have a location yet, but you'll let us know when, in fact.
It is in CCC 178.
CC,
C 178, where you have them.
okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, and Trustee Little, and I know that you're on the phone, at your last meeting, we had talked about bringing in a dictionology certificate before you today. And in talking with Dr. Fierro and the faculty, we thought just to keep procedure and process appropriate, we're going to bring that with some other new certificates to the Academic and Student Affairs Committee on the 22nd, and then we'll bring it back to the Board of Trustees. So that's why you don't see it on your agenda tonight.
Okay.
That sounds great, Joe. Thank you.
I believe that's it for board reports, unless for the good of the board, there's any other trustee that has something to provide us with. If not, we'll move on to Dr. Schaefer's contract. And I would turn this over to Tara to speak to that briefly.
Okay,
I did say briefly, didn't I?
You
You're
did.
always brief,
I
so.
am brief, which is a rare thing for a lawyer. So this is the final version of Dr. Schaefer's contract. As you know, the essential terms can be found really on pages 3 through 6, which concern his compensation and benefits. I know I've answered most of your questions concerning the contract prior to this date, but if there are any questions now, I'd be happy to entertain those.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract. Then we can have discussion after.
Is there a second?
I'll
second.
Trustee DuBois seconded. Any discussion?
Has there been a move and a second, Ed, on Joe's contract?
Yes, there has, Brenda.
Okay.
I'm asking for discussion. Do you have any comments?
My understanding is that this contract is the same or essentially the same as what we discussed on the 27th. Is that correct?
Yes, Brenda, this is Tara. Yes, it is.
Okay, very well. Very good. Thanks, Tara. That's all I needed to know.
Tara? I thought you had something to say.
I have said my piece.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Yay.
We have you employed again.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and if I may,
I'll call you back for the executive session, Brenda.
okay. Very good, Vicki. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you for your confidence in me, and I look forward to another 3 years of excellent outcomes and great partnership. And so I appreciate the fact that you illustrated your faith and trust in my ability to lead the institution and ultimately work for you. And I know you will keep me online and on target, but there's great things ahead of us, and I'm excited to be part of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think the board, without a doubt, would not have moved forward if it had not been in agreement with that. So we look forward to working with you in the coming years. So, next item is ex officio trustee updates. And Ken, at this point, if you would like, normally I would give that privilege, and it's in the agenda that it would be Butch first, but I'm putting that out of order because you're new and giving you the priority tonight. If there's anything you would like to report to us.
Mr. Chairman, did you intend to go past item number 5?
No, I didn't,
Oops.
but I did. And that's why they're looking at me like, we're not ready yet. Let me step backwards here. And item number 5 is the legislative update there. And I'd like to have Joe start, not me, with both joint education and joint appropriations.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm happy to do that. And I know we introduced her at dinner, but I thought for the record, and since it's a germane topic, I'd like to introduce Ms. Erin Taylor, who is the new executive director of the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees and U.S. Trustees. And we as institutions will be working closely with her on legislative and probably many other advocacy agenda items. And so thank you, Erin, for being able to take a few minutes with us tonight and take time out of your family busy schedule to do so. And welcome. We're looking forward to working with you. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I thought it might be helpful to, and forgive me if I slip into informality in terms of our interaction, but I thought it'd be helpful for us just to have a conversation about a couple of the interim committees and the study topics that we'll be intersecting with. Tomorrow and Friday, as we mentioned, the Joint Interim Education Committee will be meeting in beautiful Saratoga, the metropolis of Saratoga. They have a full agenda, and you'll find a copy of that in your packet. And at this point, it sounds like you, Mr. Chairman, will be there. Aaron will be there as well. I know that Dr. Rose from the commission will be there. And I also know that Dr. Carla Leach will be there as well, since it's within her service area. This is what I believe they consider, and Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong here, sort of organizing meetings in terms of the first meetings, although the agenda for the Education Committee looks pretty detailed and pretty robust at this point. But I thought I would just call out a couple of items that are worth your awareness, and then I would love to hear if you have questions, comments on those, or on any of the other items. Item number 3 tomorrow on their agenda, dealing with college and career readiness, workforce skills gap, and preparation. Will be an interesting conversation, and I expect it to be just that, a conversation between the committee and many of the individuals you'll see on this list, including Dr. Rose, Mary Kay Hill, the governor's policy advisor, the director of workforce services, Joan Evans, and even a representative from the university. I will be honest, I don't really know how that conversation will play out. My guess is we will start to hear a lot about K-12 completion and college continuation rates, a lot about choosing careers and occupations that are in high demand. So I wouldn't doubt that we will see and hear the focus on STEM education in this conversation again, math, science, and some of those things. And hopefully there'll be some focused conversation on that, doing what we're doing with our strategic plan, which is really trying to break down those transition points from K-12 to higher ed, from the community college to the university, and from the community college to the university into the workforce. And so it should be an interesting conversation. One point that I would like to just stress, if you're looking tomorrow, Mr. Chairman, for an example, or trying to find an intersection with LCCC, I will share with you one of the things that we're struggling with right now. We've been doing great work in our information technology areas, and I know the Faculty Senate President here, Ms. Leah Noonan, who happens to have her day job within these programmatic areas, can attest to this. So we've done a lot with our programs in information technology, and a lot to align those with occupations with some of our current and emerging employers in the area. But one of the things we're struggling with is getting students interested in pursuing these paths again. And when they do pursue them, especially in some of the programming areas, making sure they have the skills, the mathematics skills to actually access that. So one of the things that I hope the committee talks about a little bit is how we start to really help students identify and ultimately pursue the paths that lead to occupations here in Wyoming, especially those that are helping us diversify our economy. And information technology is one of those great opportunities. But I know we have capacity within those programs, and trying to get students to pursue an information technology career is one of those challenges. So it'll be interesting to hear, for example, Brent Bacon talk about what the Department of Education may be doing around this topic as well, and just sort of where the committee decides to take it. There's interesting words in your discussion of incentives to increase student participation, and I'm curious to see how that pans out and what those are. So that's one topic, and I'd pause there. Trustee Barker may have some insight, and certainly Ms. Taylor, if you have anything to share, or Mr. Chairman, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But that's one topic that we intersect with. I don't know how it'll impact us.
Let's start with Trustee Barker, if you have.
Mr. Chair, in working with the Hathaway program, there are several unintentional consequences of the Hathaway. This is one of the pieces is STEM science. That's been a fairly hot topic in the legislature. There was a bill that went through, kind of got tabled in this past session. And the bill dealt with, in particular, a new potential scholarship for science, STEM type, trade type scholarships. And so from what I'm kind of a hot topic around us in the Hathaway world at this point is trying to increase the enrollment in those courses. And so we're working with the science, our STEM, our CTE folks at the department, and just getting those aligned to some of in particular with Hathaway. Hathaway is really a driving force for many decisions at this point, and what's happening with the CTE STEM courses is they haven't been added in an area that's conducive for students to take and count towards the Hathaway. And so now we're finally getting to a point where districts are aligning to the standards and they're building their curriculum to align to the Hathaway success curriculum. And that's kind of the gist of from where I'm coming from on the Hathaway end. And I know there's several other things that they'll go in there from there though.
Any questions or comments regarding Trustee Barker?
So
Yes.
The Hathaway, is it, are you guys allocating money to students so that they can go into information technology, or is that the issue right now?
Hathaway is, Mr. Chair, Hathaway is open to any student in whatever field they want to go into for the most part, as long as they're degree or certificate seeking. So they don't necessarily discriminate against the program that students want to go into. But what's happened in the past is students weren't taking some of those information management courses prior to college, and primarily because they didn't align to some of the state standards in the curriculum. And now we're starting to see schools, secondary schools, start to align that a little bit better, and therefore getting approved by Hathaway. Hathaway has a success curriculum is what we call it. And those courses, Hathaway approves those courses from the schools to be counted as a Hathaway course. So once they move into the post-secondary institution, they can go into any major, and it's definitely open for any major.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, members of the board, Trustee Barker, correct me if I'm wrong. One of the other conversation points that this is sort of central to is the fact that Hathaway and the success curriculum is really driven in many ways by students' GPA and the ACT scores. And so there is a concern, because we don't currently weight GPA and things like that, is that perhaps we're actually discouraging some of the most talented students from pursuing more difficult courses for fear that their GPA will slide. And is that impacting their readiness to succeed or the way they advance when they come to college, because they decided not to take the advanced placement mathematics courses or other courses for fear that it's going to impact their GPA? And so I know there's conversation still ongoing about weighted GPA and what to do there, but there's also the fear of which course do I take and which one's going to impact my GPA ultimately, and is that actually discouraging them from taking information management courses and some of these other courses? So it's an interesting conundrum, but a good problem to have, knowing that we've had such a success with the Hathaway project. But I know there's a continued interest in the legislature to be looking at how do we get students to pursue the trades, and they're going to be coming to our programs in that new building. How do we encourage them to actually pursue that? And when they come to us, they also have the opportunity for Hathaway.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pick up on what Dr. Joe commented on earlier, that he encouraged those who are going to be attending the meeting to keep your ears tuned to the discussion on incentives. When you hear incentives, to me, it sort of indicates money. And I'm wondering if it's additional money, or would it be subtraction of existing monies from the Hathaway funds? I think that's something to be watching.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And Trustee Erickson, I am on a task force right now to evaluate that, how we incentivize those sort of programs and get more students to take the more difficult classes. That's where I actually was at a couple weeks ago, was at an AP College Board meeting in California, and talking around some of those to get more students to take AP dual concurrent and IB courses. So currently we're meeting every week to try and find alternative routes to, and one of the big ones is money. So it's a work in progress.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll keep going and just sort of highlight a couple others. I do want to point out the school safety and security item on their agenda for tomorrow. It is predominantly focused on K-12, but it intersects with a lot of the security and the gun laws and some of the other laws. So it's interesting. And I believe Vice President Hoagland, correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to send Director Crosby, our Director of Campus Safety, will be over there just to monitor and keep focused on that. I know there's going to be conversation about school resource officers. And I think that there's something in there for us to be apprised of and aware of as this conversation ensues, because we think eventually it will intersect with the notion of guns on campus and school safety on college campuses as well. And so I thought that was a great idea for Carol to recommend that James go over and be there. So you'll see James over there.
Good.
That. And then on Friday, the only other one I wanted to point out to you was just an update on the educational data systems. As you recall, we've, as a state, been sort of on a roller coaster ride with our longitudinal data system work. You will hear, as a part of that, there'll be an update on the work that the Wyoming Community College Commission and the community colleges are doing to perhaps jumpstart an educational longitudinal data system. And there's been some wonderful work that I know you've heard of in the past that the colleges are working on to create consistency within their data structures, working on data integrity projects so that we can more effectively and efficiently share data, conduct information analytics, and really help drive strategic decisions based off of data and provide those data to the legislature. So it's interesting because that topic will be jointly presented by Flint Waters, who's the state CIO, who, by the way, his wife just graduated from our nursing program here, and Jim Rose, the executive director. And I know that the ETS Director Waters' direction is different than where we're going, although we're trying to work together. So I'll be curious to sort of hear how that conversation plays out. But I can tell you that the community colleges are really starting to step out in front of where the other portions of the state are going in terms of a longitudinal data system and being able to actually provide, track, and do business intelligence and analytics. There's other interesting things on there. Ultimately, it'll be of interest. I don't know how germane they'll be to the community college agenda, but as these go, I would expect that we will probably have even more work and more questions as a result of this meeting than fewer of them. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the meeting tomorrow, and I certainly thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to go over and be part of that.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question. In regard to the longitudinal data study, which has developed here recently under the commission, and I'm wondering if this presentation that Dr. Rose and Flint Waters will be making has an indication that things will move on quicker. This, I guess I'm putting you on the spot there. Maybe that's an unfair question, but why don't we just wait and see what happens?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Erickson, I would appreciate that.
I'm sorry. I just came to my mind, but as I said it.
Dr. Schaefer, you wanted to talk a little bit about the Joint Appropriations Committee?
And this one I would like some feedback from you on as well. So as Ms. Taylor knows, we discussed this in length with Dr. Rose last week up in Casper. And you'll see that on their first day of their meeting, the afternoon is essentially dedicated to the community college funding model review. And the interim study language was interesting in what ended up in the budget bill, the footnotes for the study, which was essentially examining if there are issues, and I don't remember the language, Carol, you may be able to help me, if there are issues or things that need to change with the community college funding, should they be studied? And also language referring to whether or not consideration for local capacity. Do you have the language there, Carol, by chance? You want to read that to us? Because the piece about the local programming is intriguing.
The priority 2 community college funding model review. Review the funding model for community colleges and determine whether the model requires improvement or change. Report by September 1st, 2015, pursuant to Section 356 of the 2015 Senate File 1, on a recommendation for a new funding formula or a structure of the task force to review the model. The review shall consider if local limits on college expansion of facilities and programs should be limited to legislative oversight so as to regulate growth among the community colleges. Is that what you want me to?
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Carol. I appreciate that. That last piece is what's most intriguing, whether or not there should be legislative limits that would somehow sustain, curtail, or control growth at the local level. And I bring that up to you because it is, again, the intersection between local control, local authority over state authority. And I don't mean that to say that there isn't a role for our legislature. Our state and our legislature invest heavily in the community colleges. We believe, and I think I can speak for the presidents across the state, we believe that the system with the Community College Commission, even though there's some bumps along the way, works well in coordinating the expansion, if you will, of academic programs at the community colleges. And they do that considering aspects that are pertinent to the role of the commission. You do that as trustees with your role in governing this institution. So the language is interesting to us because I don't recall that the colleges have ever expressed a concern with that aspect of it. And so why they're there, and I don't know if those, language sort of ends up there sometimes because, somebody mentioned it. Other times there's more purpose behind it. And so it's something that we're curious about. But here's what I can tell you as we move into this session. One of probably the greatest misnomers is the term community college funding model. Essentially, the state does not have a funding model for the community colleges. It's confused often because the Wyoming Community College Commission has a funding allocation model. So there is actually a pretty robust and a system that we agree to, a model in which the commission takes whatever they receive from the legislative block grant appropriation, state aid to the community colleges, and also the collection of the 4 mill funds, the local funds. Those go in, and we have a model for distributing those to the 7 community colleges. And there are pros and cons to it, but in general, the community colleges support that model. But we do not have a funding model. So a model in which the legislature determines how much funding should we put into that block grant. And that's one of the confusing pieces of it. So, that opens up some interesting doors about whether we actually move to a true funding model like K-12 has, and some of the benefits and drawbacks that come with that. But I think that's one of the points that you're going to hear Jim Rose make at the JAC meeting is look, let's be clear, we don't have a funding model. Basically, what we've used is a continuation of whatever's been funded in the past in the standard budget going forward. And then we argue about increases or cuts. That's the funding model to it. It's really based on incremental addition, based on what we've spent or been appropriated in the past. There's some merit in looking at that. And if there was to be a study, and I don't know that I support or really would suggest a study is the way to move forward, that should be the focus of the study, not the allocation piece. And that's one of the things that we'll have to be clear communicating about is we're okay with the allocation model. The way we allocate it is we're okay with that. We want to talk about the way in which it's appropriated. And more specifically to the last legislative session, we're not even asking for more money. As you recall, what we're asking for is that volatile enrollment growth piece where we go back every year asking for an exception budget request. And every year, if we get funded, we know that funding goes away, then we have to argue for it again. Mm-hmm. That's the piece that we're really focusing on. And over the last, I think, 5 biennia, the legislature has funded 70% of that. So it's money biennia after biennia that the legislature is actually providing to the community colleges. But because there's no stability to that, the community colleges don't allocate that to some of the core expenses, faculty, staff, ongoing expenditures that we have to commit to year after year after year. And so what we're running into now is businesses and employers coming to us and saying, okay, we want you to expand your diesel technology program. We want to do something around manufacturing, perhaps in Laramie. And when we look at the funds available and we're thinking, okay, we got to reallocate the current fund to do that. And yet there's $1.5 million of enrollment growth that we can't use for that. And we're telling our employers essentially that money, and they're already allocating it. If that were part of the standard budget, they're making those commitments. And so your comment, Mr. Chairman, at dinner about getting employers involved is very, very apropos. So that's the big piece we're talking about, is how do we take that volatility out of the funding practice? Not necessarily giving us more money, but let's shifting it away from one-time money and into the actual standard budget request. And then it gets a little bit more convoluted from there, in which we're actually basing the increased request off of some of the old approaches based off of enrollment. And there is some work that needs to be done there, but really we think that there's a pretty simple fix for moving forward. And it's essentially allowing the commission to calculate an increase to their standard budget request based off of enrollment fluctuations at the community colleges. Come forward, ask for that. If the funding comes, it goes to the standard budget. And then in 4 years, every 2 biennia, we come back, recalculate, and ask for it. And by the way, if we recalculate and it actually would require a reduction in funding, then the standard budget request may be lower than what it was the previous biennium. And that could be done by a simple change in statute. And I think that's one of the pieces that we're hoping to convey at the Joint Appropriations Committee. So just quickly, and then I will be quiet and would love to hear your thoughts. The sequence and the structure, Jim, Dr. Rose will essentially talk, and I think Matt Petrie and the chairman of the commission, Sandra Meyer, wonderful lady, and she'll do a great job. They're going to kind of present the commission's perspective on this, how we've been funded, how the enrollment growth has worked, the challenges with that, talk a little bit about the exception model. Dr. Young, then after the break, will come back and represent the colleges and the presidents and really talk about why this is so important and why the current structure isn't necessarily working for us, and hopefully we'll have some recommendations of, and here's how we would suggest you proceed. And then I know Walt Reagy will step up and talk about it from the trustees' perspective and really stress that piece about employers, community, support, stability. And that's sort of how the presentations are starting to develop, but there is still time, and I would be incredibly curious and grateful to hear your perspectives on things you think we should be stressing to the Appropriations Committee.
Trustees? They've left you speechless.
Well, not really. I'm just waiting for somebody else to speak.
Trustee Erickson, go ahead.
All right, thank
Lead
you.
us off.
Well, my ears tune up again when I hear the control of our destiny language that was stated when Carol read that document. I'm wondering if the legislature would benefit from some education on how the Community College Commission actually does control what happens at the various colleges in terms of programs. Now, we have to vet our various programmatic initiatives and then submit them to the college if it's a new initiative for the commissioner's approval. And I'm not all sure that that is part of the initiative that comes with that phrase, controlling local growth. Again, it may have something to do with money, but it also may have something to do with programs.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I maybe put Dr. Malm and Mr. Cadle on the spot too. You know, one of the things that we'll be talking about is who's on the Joint Appropriations Committee, and an informal conversation or connection with them has proven to be useful. So, for example, we took the opportunity with Senator Ross and Representative Nicholas here today to sort of ask them what are they thinking. We have Representative Moniz that's on there, as well as Representative Connolly. And I don't know if you guys have relationships with them, but even as a way of introduction, James, to say, what are you thinking about this? I think might be helpful to reach out and have those conversations. And I'm sure Aaron's probably doing something similar to sort of get a sense of what they're thinking about here. And that would be curious. But I think Jim will cover a lot of what you're recommending, Trustee Erickson. he'll also probably say we've provided this in the past, and that's what's interesting is what's driving it, and you know, how much do they really want to know about that. I'll be curious to see how the conversation ensues, to be honest with you, and we might get a better idea of truly what the interests are. But those informal connections will go a long ways in sort of asking where they're coming from. I don't know, Aaron, if you've given this any thought or want to make any comments. You I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to.
I will, Mr. Chairman and President Schaefer. I think this is an interesting opportunity before the JAC. While Mr. Rose might not be able to say this is how we'd like to see it, though he's going to say we want stable funding and whatnot, I think the presidents and the trustees can do that and perhaps should, because I don't think we really want a task force. And if we can help get some minds to change in that room that day before they say, let's appoint a 5-member task force or whatever, I think that could be effective. So I think it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and say what you think should happen, not let's see and wait for a task force to then say what they're going to possibly think about. So that would be the one thing I would say is if the trustees and the presidents can use the relationships that they have to have those conversations, and whoever's there that day probably needs to say it then that day as well.
Thank you. Other comments? A question, and I probably shouldn't ask this, but the University of Wyoming doesn't have the allocation problem other than within the colleges, but they're looking at obtaining a block grant. That's the normal process for them. How would that be different for the community colleges, or how is that looked at differently?
Mr. Chairman and Aaron, again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know with your role with the Taxpayers Association, you've got a better picture sometimes on how the revenue flows. My understanding is that the university predominantly gets a block grant. Each year, each biennium, when they make budget requests, my understanding is they'll typically make requests for very specific purposes. And so they make new requests, but have checked the box that says, if funded, this becomes part of the standard budget block grant. And so it's really a project-based additive process from their budget perspective. So if they need to have funding for, a market adjustment for salary increases, if they need it to help operate a new program, if they needed to research how they're going to take the engineering program to the next level, they make those requests as part of the budget process. But much of that ends up going into their standard budget request then, which increases as they move into the next year. So I don't know that there's truly a funding model in which the legislature determines how much funding to provide to UW. It's really more of the standard budget and what are they asking for in the next biennium, and they've been relatively successful. Does that ring sort of like the?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, President Schaefer, and trustees. That's fair. That's exactly how that works. Could it be different for the community colleges? I don't know that it really would be different because, as the president mentioned, there is no particularly fun or outlined process for it. This is what they get, and they go in there with their reasons, and whether it's School of Energy or whoever else, they justify it to the committee and then decide from there.
The one interesting intersection, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is that we do have a unique relationship with the Wyoming Community College Commission because they essentially control the budget requests to the legislature, and they are a state agency. And as a result, their role in being able to truly advocate for increased requests is somewhat muted, and I think rightfully so. And so oftentimes what they advance is very similar to what you may see from a state agency, which often follows the budget directives of the governor and really is sort of a status quo type of request. So their ability to say, we really want to do X, we need to do Y, we need to do Z, put it into the budget, really champion for that, isn't the same as what the university can do with their trustees. And so it's a different relationship. And that's why the Trustees Association becomes so important because if we say we really need X or Y, very rarely will it show up in the commission's budget request. We have to work the legislature to actually get it activated there or work the governor. This is the first time, and I'm very pleased with Dr. Rose and the commission. This is the first time where I think the commission is actually considering or will consider doing some of those very specific additive requests. And in this case, specifically for block grant funding to the community college to stabilize this funding base. And so, that's something that we'll see if we can actually move in that direction. But just the fact that they're a state agency makes it a little bit more challenging compared to the way the university and the university's trustees can really advocate for their requests.
I think it's good to understand the differences because oftentimes we're compared to them, and this allows us to kind of appreciate how we might approach it more effectively rather than simply copying or trying to pursue the same approach.
Great. And Mr. Chairman, my last comment is the Joint Appropriations Interim Committee is here in Cheyenne. I just saw the dates there. June 23rd. And it's in 204. That's the Joint Appropriation Committee's meeting room. It's relatively small and can get very warm. But certainly if you have interest and would like to be there that afternoon starting at 1 o'clock, I would encourage your participation. And Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you have thoughts offline, between now and then, we'd certainly love to hear them. So please share. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. I think that's very helpful for us as trustees and working with the association and with our new executive director. That should be hopefully an opportunity to be more successful in the area. Ex officio trustee updates. I'm sorry, I got you excited earlier, but I will come back. Ex officio trustee Quiones. Did I say that somewhat correctly?
I like the way you said it, so I'm good.
Okay.
It's never been said right my whole life, so I'm pretty used to it. You just call me Jamie Quinones, whatever. Jamie Q, whatever. Jeremy, if it sounds right that day. Jimmy. I'm not really good at this, but I think that the art department is suffering in a different kind of way. And I'm an art major, so of course I deal with it heads up with the suffering. And for me, I have a 2-bedroom apartment. It's great and everything, but when it comes to actually performing and doing my art and working on my art, there's not a place to do it. I sat out front here in front of the college and painted all last semester because there isn't any space available. And what I thought, would be awesome, which might take 3 years or whatever you guys were saying. Yeah, I think Carol told me something like that earlier. But is if we could have an open door working room for the ceramics, for the painting, for the drawing classes. It'd be tough with the metal classes because they deal with metals and gases and stuff, but just like an open door room, no security. Anyone that brings their art supplies in to do their painting, they're held at their own will, what they bring into the art room. Just some sort of room. Is there a room available anywhere on campus where we could have something like that? Because really, I love art and it's my passion, and not being able to have the amount of space to paint at, or just those types of boundaries, has been a real oppression in my art. And I still put a lot more hours in than I see some students. I mean, maybe they are, maybe they're not. But it'd be nice just to have a room, a little 10 by 20, a little 20 by 20 room where we could go in, no security, nothing going on, where we could actually just work with our art degrees.
We'll look forward, and you have new leadership in that area that already is hearing a challenge. So we appreciate that. And will the student government be meeting throughout the summer?
No, they won't. So
you're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
As you are with the art.
The hips ahead of time here.
Okay. We really appreciate those comments, and that's the kind of thing I think is helpful, is to hear from students and hear what the issues are out there. So I'm sure you'll be hearing something back on that.
Okay.
And our Over the Hill gang. I'm not sure how you want to take that, but
where's Don?
Mr. Chairman,
we're so happy you're here.
Mr. Chairman, our report last week, we touched on a couple of things that, with regards to the city appraisal, that we're waiting on the city to get that appraisal done for the lots that we're hoping to work on, and not much movement on that just yet. So the city hasn't got the appraisal done, and so we're still waiting on that piece to come forward so we can start that hopefully more serious negotiations. And other work in process. I know that Dr. Malm is working on the advisory board and that piece. And in talking with Dr. Malm this morning a little bit, he shared with me the paper that said that I guess the Spradley Bar project that they were going to buy the lot right south of the Albany County campus, I guess they have withdrawn that application. And apparently they did that last night at the city council. There's some other discussions, I guess, going on, which I'm not sure how that might go, but what their plans might be at the point, but they have withdrawn that application for that lot. So at this point, that's about all we have to, I think. Dr. Malm, do you have anything you wanted to share with the trustees? So.
Mr. Chairman, and James, I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you want to just share briefly, because it is a project that may hit their desk, the patio, outdoor stage, and learning environment project, if you want to kind of give them the quick overview, because I know down the road we'll be working on that perhaps bringing it forward.
Yeah, our campus activity board manages the student fees that the students pay at the Albany County campus, and the students wanted to create a sustainable project that they could do at the college with their student fees. And when they looked out at the landscape, they said, we want a learning space and a living space outside the building that'll keep more students on campus between classes and be a stage for special events and campus activities. So we engaged an architect to come up with some sketches, and they have a budget. And the students are really pleased with it. We're very excited about it, but it's essentially a very large patio project that is on the east side of our building that all of our doors of campus would empty out onto. So we'll have those sketches, we'll have some budgets and some concepts. And it's a big one. This is something that we're looking at spending $120,000 on. So it hits a lot of those $100,000 thresholds. That'll require your approval, the community college group's approval. So we're really excited about it. Just more good news, more good growth, and more energy that's student-driven and student-centered on campus.
A quick question, Mr. Chair. You said this would be paid by student fees, or it would be partially paid by student fees?
Right now, all the dollars that they have for this and what we have, they're all student fee dollars. They've had unspent fees over the years. So they have this pot of money, and that's why they're able to make such a significant project.
Okay, that sounds exciting. I look forward to seeing that move forward. As far as new business, I'm not aware of any new business to share with you this evening. So we'll move on to the additional items there. Board correspondence, and I will not read that to you, but I did want to emphasize that the Wyoming State Parks and Cultural Resources, Millward Simpson, who's the director, was commenting very positively about the theater department's recent production of Doubt, a Parable, a few weeks ago, and he wanted to congratulate folks on that excellent program. And I think it's just important that we give recognition to those who have caught the eye of the public and been recognized and commented on for the good work that they are doing. Next meeting and events, those are pretty straightforward. Any questions, issues with those?
Mr. Chair.
Trustee Merrill?
Thank you. I had already clarified this with Vicki, but the picnic is on Friday at 12 o'clock at Holiday Park.
Yes, and
I missed it last year, so I'm really sad. I want to go this year.
would you please tell people, I'm very sorry I won't be there because I'll be in Saratoga. I
Oh, you
would
will.
prefer to be with them, but
I will represent you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Don't eat my hamburger, though. You might as well. It'd go to waste. Is there any public comment at this time?
I'm not public, but I'd just like to say, I guess I sort of am. Millward's parents are in Laramie for middle of the month doing at the college the famous play on Colden Pond.
Oh, wow.
Pete and Lynn Simpson have the main roles
Oh.
in that, and I think if any of you want to go over and see it, it would be worthwhile. Because they did the gin game once a while back, and it was very well received. So Millward, coming from that kind of heritage, really knows his theater business, and that's why a letter like this to the college really, I think, means more than just somebody that's an administrator.
Yes. Having said that, and I believe it's appropriate that I'm open for a motion to adjourn to executive session.
I so move for a personnel matter.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll start the executive session in about, let's start it at, have a trouble seeing the clock there.
It's 20 till.
How about,
Oh, it's 5 after. I can't read
how
that clock.
about, we'll try for 15 till.
So what we need to do is.
15 after, I'm sorry, I am looking there.